So here we are, you and I, standing at the edge of something that has always been flowing, long before we arrived to witness it. There's a river here. Not just any river, but the river that Marcus Aurelius saw when he sat in his tent along the Danube, watching moonlight break into 1,000 pieces across the moving water. The same river Heraclitus pointed to when he said everything flows, everything changes, and yet something remains eternally present. Now, I want you to understand something from the very beginning of our journey together. I'm not here to tell you what the river means. I'm here to stand beside you while we both look at it. Because you see, the moment someone tells you what to see, you stop seeing what's actually there. And what's there? Oh, what's there is far more interesting than any second-hand description. Feel the ground beneath your feet. Solid earth. Grass, perhaps. Maybe stones worn smooth by centuries of people coming to this very spot, drawn by something they couldn't quite name. You can hear it, can't you? That sound water makes when it knows where it's going, but isn't in any particular hurry to get there. It's been making that sound since before language, before thought, before the first human being ever stopped to wonder what it all means. Marcus wrote in his private journal, never meant for our eyes, remember, just a man talking to himself by candlelight. He wrote, "Observe constantly that all things take place by change, and accustom thyself to consider that the nature of the universe loves nothing so much as to change the things which are." But here's the peculiar thing. We stand here, you and I, at the riverbank, and something in us hesitates. Have you noticed that? That little pulling back? We came here deliberately, walked all this way to see the water, and now that we're here, we find ourselves calculating. How cold might it be? How deep? How strong the current? And beneath all those practical questions, there's another one, isn't there? A question that Plato would recognize immediately. It's the question the soul asks when it suspects it's about to learn something true about itself. What if I cannot return to the shore as the same person who left it? Well, what if you can't? You see, we've been educated, thoroughly educated, to believe that stability is strength, that the solid ground beneath our feet is more real than the flowing water before our eyes. But the ancient philosophers, the ones who didn't have the distractions we carry, they noticed something magnificent. They noticed that the river never fights with itself. It doesn't resist its own nature. When it meets a stone, it doesn't stop to have an argument with the stone about who has the right of way. It simply continues. Over, around, through, under. The river finds its way by being absolutely true to what it is. Now you might say, but I'm not a river. I'm a person. I have responsibilities, obligations, a name, a history, people who depend on me being exactly who I was yesterday. And you're right. You're absolutely right. You're not a river. You're something far more extraordinary. Your consciousness itself, temporarily crystallized into this particular form, looking at water and recognizing something ancient and familiar in its movement. You're the universe becoming aware of itself, if only for these few precious decades we call a lifetime. And somewhere deep in your bones, below thought, below language, below all the stories you tell yourself about who you're supposed to be, something in you knows that the river isn't separate from you. It never was. The Stoics had a word, sympathia. It means the hidden connection between all things. Not a mystical idea, but a practical observation. The rain that falls on mountains becomes the river becomes the sea becomes clouds, the clouds become rain. And somewhere in that endless circulation, here you stand, made of water yourself. 60% of you flowing even as we speak, watching water and feeling what? Recognition? Longing? Fear? Perhaps all three at once. And that's perfectly natural. Because you see, standing at the riverbank isn't really about the river at all. It's about that moment when you realize you've been standing at the edge of your own life, watching it flow past, wondering when, if ever, you're going to step in. So here we stand, you and I, at the threshold. The river doesn't care whether we enter or not. It has its own business to attend to. But we didn't come all this way just to admire the view, did we? No. I think we came here for the same reason Marcus came to his river, the same reason Plato descended into his cave. We came because somewhere, in some quiet hour, we heard something calling. Not a voice exactly, more like a remembering. A remembering of something we knew before we learned to be afraid of movement, before we were taught that change was loss, before we forgot that we too are part of the endless flow of things. The river is patient. It has all the time in the world. The question is, do we? And so, we take the first step. Not a leap. No, that's not how profound changes really happen, despite what the motivational speakers tell you. It's a step. One foot moving forward while the other still remembers the safety of solid ground. And immediately, you feel it. The coolness climbing up through your skin. The way the current, gentle as it might be at the edge, already has opinions about where you should go. This is the moment, you see. This exact moment when every cell in your body starts sending messages to your brain. Ancient messages. Primal messages. The ground was certain, they say. The ground didn't move. Why are we doing this? Why are we choosing uncertainty when certainty is right there, 3 steps backward? And here, right here, is where most people stop. Not because the water is too cold, not because the current is too strong, but because the conversation between their fear and their desire becomes too loud. They stand there, ankle deep in possibility, having arguments with themselves about whether this was a good idea. I know this place. We all know this place. It's the place where Plato's prisoners, having been untied, having been told they can turn around and see the fire that's been casting shadows all their lives. It's the place where they say, "No, thank you. I prefer my chains. At least I understand them." But you're still listening, which means you're still standing in the water, which means something in you is stronger than the ancient fear of letting go. Marcus Aurelius, and remember, this was an emperor, a man who had every reason to believe he controlled things. He wrote something remarkable. He said, "Confine yourself to the present." The present. Not the story about what might happen if you go deeper. Not the memory of everyone who told you to be careful. Just this. Just the feeling of water moving around your ankles, your calves, now your knees. Just the way your body naturally adjusts its balance without you having to think about it. Just the sound of the river, which has changed now that you're in it. You're not observing the music anymore. You've become part of the instrument. Do you feel that? How the moment you entered the water, the river adjusted to include you. The current now moves differently because you're here. You've changed the pattern simply by participating in it. This isn't metaphor. This is physics. This is how reality actually works. Every choice creates ripples. Every presence matters. But here's what the philosophers understood that we've forgotten. The river changes you far more than you change the river. And that's terrifying, isn't it? Because we've built entire civilizations on the premise that we can stand apart from the flow. We've created buildings that last centuries, institutions that outlive their founders, words carved in stone as if stone itself wasn't just slow water, crystallized and pretending to be permanent. Yet here you are, knee-deep now, and you can feel it. That ancient argument between what you think you are and what you actually are. The mind says, I am separate, I am solid, I have boundaries. But the water touches you and whispers, really? Where do you end and I begin? Where does the warmth of your skin stop and the coolness of my current start? Show me the exact line. This is what Heraclitus meant when he said you can't step in the same river twice. Not because the river changes, though it does, but because the you who steps in the second time isn't the same you who stepped in the first time. You're already different. The water has already taught you something about release. Now, there's a moment, and maybe you're feeling it right now, when the water reaches your waist, your center of gravity. This is the commitment point. Behind you, the shore still calls with its promise of the known, the safe, the predictable. Ahead, the river deepens, and you can't quite see the bottom anymore. Marcus faced this moment in every dawn meditation. Plato faced it every time he chose truth over comfort. And now you face it, not as an emperor or a philosopher, but as something perhaps more brave, as yourself. Without titles or pretense, just consciousness meeting consciousness in the form of flowing water. And here's the secret that no one tells you. The river isn't trying to take anything from you. It's trying to show you what you've been carrying that you never needed. All that weight, the weight of who you're supposed to be, the weight of every failure you've refused to forgive, the weight of every success you've clung to like a life raft. The river receives it all. Not to destroy it, but to carry it for you, to dissolve it back into the flow where it came from in the first place. Watch your hands. Look at them there, just beneath the surface. They look different, don't they? Magnified, clarified, more real somehow. The water doesn't hide things, it reveals them. It shows you your own hands as if for the first time. These hands that have held so tightly to so many things. These hands that have built and broken, caressed and pushed away, written words and torn them up. In the water, they learn a different way of being. They learn to cup without grasping, to move without forcing, to feel the current as information rather than resistance. And now, now comes the beautiful part. You realize you've been walking deeper without deciding to. Your body knew before your mind did. It remembered something from before you were born, when you floated in different water, when surrender meant safety, when the flow was home. The philosopher Lao Tzu, watching his own river in ancient China, said, "Nothing in the world is softer than water, yet nothing is better at overcoming the hard and strong." You're beginning to understand what he meant, not as an idea, but as an experience. The water doesn't fight you, it includes you. It doesn't judge your hesitation, it waits. It doesn't punish your fear, it holds you anyway. And so here we are, you and I, no longer standing at the riverbank, but standing in the river itself. The conversation has changed, hasn't it? We're not talking about water anymore. We're talking through it, with it, as it. The deep channel calls ahead. Can you feel it? that pull toward the center where the current runs true. That's where we're going next, if you're ready. And something tells me you are. So now we learn what the river has been trying to teach all along. You're chest deep, and something extraordinary has happened. The fight has gone out of you. Not because you've given up, but because you've discovered something that changes everything. The current isn't your enemy. It never was. It's a conversation. And like any real conversation, it requires both speaking and listening, pushing and yielding, knowing when to assert yourself and when to let the other voice carry the melody for a while. Watch, really watch how the water moves around you. It doesn't move in straight lines. Nothing in nature does. It spirals, eddies, creates little whirlpools that appear and disappear like thoughts in meditation. And you, standing there in the midst of it all, you're learning its language. Not with your mind. The mind is too slow for this. You're learning with your body, that ancient intelligence that knew how to swim before you knew how to walk. Marcus Aurelius understood this. He wrote, "The universe is transformation. Our life is what our thoughts make it." But he wasn't talking about positive thinking. He wasn't selling you a program. He was standing in his own river, the river of leading an empire during plague and war, and discovering that transformation isn't something you do. It's something you allow. Feel how the current moves differently at different depths? Near the surface, it's all chaos and chatter, broken light and restless motion. But down by your waist, your hips, it moves with purpose. And deeper still, near your feet, there's something almost like stillness. Not the absence of movement, but movement so unified with itself that it feels like peace. This is your mind, exactly this. On the surface, where we spend most of our days, everything is urgent. Every email, every deadline, every slight, every fear, they all crash and foam and demand immediate attention. "React to me," they cry. "Fight me, fix me, solve me now." But drop just a little deeper, down to the level of the heart, and the urgency changes to rhythm. Yes, things must be done. Yes, responses must be made, but not frantically, with timing, with the understanding that everything has its season, its natural moment of action. And deeper still, deeper still is where Plato's cave reveals its secret. Because the cave was never about darkness, it was about depth. It was about going down below the shadows, below the fire that casts them, below even the ground of the cave itself, to find that underground river that feeds all rivers, the source. What Plato called the good, what Marcus called nature, what you might call home. But here's what nobody mentions about learning the current. You have to let go of the branches first. You know the branches I mean. Look, there's one right there hanging over the water. Your hand wants to reach for it, doesn't it? Just for security. Just to know you could stop yourself if you needed to. And there's nothing wrong with that. We all reach for branches. We call them different things: our degrees, our relationships, our bank accounts, our reputations, our carefully constructed sense of who we are. Branches. Things to hold on to when the current feels too strong. But watch what happens when you grab one. Immediately, the river becomes your enemy. Now you're fighting it. Now your arm aches. Now the current that was carrying you becomes a force trying to tear you away from safety. The branch doesn't stop the river. It just stops you from flowing with it. This is suffering. Not pain. Pain is just sensation. Suffering is the tension between what is and what we insist must be. It's holding on to the branch while the river pulls. It's demanding that life flow backward, or slower, or around us instead of through us. The Stoics had a phrase, amor fati, love of fate. But fate doesn't mean predetermined. It means the current. It means what's actually happening versus what we wish was happening. And love doesn't mean you have to like it. Love means you recognize it as part of the same river you're part of. Love means you stop pretending you're separate from what carries you. Now I want you to try something. It might feel counterintuitive at first, but stay with me. Lean back. Yes, in the water. Lean back slowly and let your feet begin to lift. This is the moment of maximum fear for most people. The moment when you're no longer standing, but not quite floating. The moment between control and trust. The philosophers call this the liminal space, the threshold where transformation happens. Not comfortable transformation. Real transformation never is, but necessary. Like birth, like death, like every honest moment of growth you've ever experienced. And then, your feet leave the bottom. And for one terrifying, exhilarating moment, you're completely at the mercy of the current. Except, wait, you're not at its mercy at all. You're in conversation with it. You can angle your body this way, and you move left. That way, and you move right. You're not controlling the river, but you're not helpless either. You're participating. You're dancing with forces infinitely larger than yourself, and somehow, impossibly, you're not lost in them. You're more yourself than ever. This is what Lao Tzu meant by Wu Wei. Effortless action. Not no action, not passive drifting, but action that aligns so perfectly with the natural flow of things that it requires no force. Like a bird riding thermals, like a surfer in the pocket of a wave. Like you, right now, learning that the current you've been fighting all your life was actually trying to carry you. Marcus wrote in his journal, late at night, probably exhausted from the weight of empire. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Do you feel it? How every obstacle in the river teaches you something about flow. That rock that forces the water to go around, it creates the most beautiful patterns. That narrow channel that seems like restriction, it increases the power. That deep pool that looks like stagnation, it's where the river gathers strength for what comes next. Your life. Exactly your life. Every obstacle that forced you to grow. Every restriction that revealed your power. Every still moment that prepared you for movement. You weren't being punished. You weren't being tested. You were being taught. The river has been teaching you all along how to be water, how to be both soft and irresistible, how to persist without insisting, how to change everything you touch while remaining essentially yourself. And now that you know the current, now that you've stopped fighting it, now that you've learned to read its language and speak in movements rather than words, now you're ready for the deep channel. The place where the river stops pretending to be separate drops of water and remembers it's one flowing thing. The place where you stop pretending to be separate from life and remember what you've always been. The ancient philosophers went there. Not all of them came back with words for what they found. Some things can only be known by drowning into them. Not drowning as in dying, drowning as in dissolving the false boundary between the observer and the observed. Float here for a moment. Just float. Feel how the river holds you when you stop insisting you need to hold yourself. Feel how it carries you when you stop insisting you need to know where you're going. This isn't giving up. This is growing up. This is what wisdom feels like in the body rather than the mind. This is what Marcus knew in his tent by the Danube, what Plato glimpsed in his cave, what you're discovering right now. The deep channel awaits, and you're ready. Not because you're strong enough to survive it, but because you're finally soft enough to let it transform you. And now comes the return. Not because the deep couldn't hold you forever, it could, but because the nature of rivers is to deliver us somewhere new. And the nature of consciousness is to expand and contract, to dive and surface, to forget and remember, over and over, like breathing. Feel yourself rising, not rushed. The river doesn't rush endings any more than it rushes beginnings, but rising nonetheless, pulled by something that might be light, might be longing, might be the simple fact that you're human and humans need air. Your feet find stones again, different stones. This is the other shore, the one you couldn't see from where you started, the one that didn't exist for you until you trusted the current to carry you here. And yes, you're walking out of the water now, but notice something remarkable. You're not leaving the river. You're taking it with you. In your hair, on your skin, in your cells that will never quite forget what it felt like to dissolve. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." But now you hear it differently, don't you? It's not a command to be grateful. It's a recognition. He's saying, every morning you emerge on a new shore. Every morning you have the choice to remember what you learned in the deep, or to pretend you never left solid ground. And here's the secret that makes all the difference. You don't have to live in the deep channel. That's not what this is about. The deep is for remembering. The shore is for living. But living differently now. Living with the knowledge of water in your bones. Living with the memory of current in your choices. Living with the understanding that every solid thing is just slow river, including you. Watch how different the world looks from this shore. The same sun, but somehow the light lands differently. The same trees, but now you see them as the river's thoughts, reaching up instead of flowing out. The same people, but now you recognize them as fellow water, temporarily convinced they're separate drops. And the problems, oh, the problems that seemed so solid from the other shore, they're still here. Your bills didn't disappear while you were floating. Your relationship didn't magically heal. Your body didn't become 20 years younger. But something has shifted in how you see them. They're not walls anymore. They're just rocks in the river. And you've learned what water does with rocks. Plato understood this. The whole point of the cave allegory wasn't to escape the cave forever. It was to return. To go back to the shadows, but knowing now what casts them. To live in the world of forms while remembering the form. To be fully human while never forgetting you're also fully divine. This is what he meant by the philosopher's burden. Not the burden of knowledge, but the burden of integration. How do you walk on solid ground when you know it's all water? How do you take things seriously when you've seen them from the depth? How do you care about temporary things when you've touched the eternal? The same way the river does. Completely, fully, without holding back. You see, knowing that everything is temporary doesn't make it less precious. It makes it more precious. That conversation with your friend isn't diminished because you know you're both flowing water. It's sanctified by it. Two temporary arrangements of the eternal, recognizing each other, sharing warmth before the current carries you on. How beautiful is that? how impossibly, heartbreakingly beautiful. This is what changes when you emerge on the other shore. Not your circumstances, but your relationship with them. The anxiety is still there, but now you recognize it as the river moving too fast through too narrow a channel. And you know how to widen. The depression is still there, but now you recognize it as the river pooling, gathering strength, and you know how to trust the gathering. The joy is still there, but now you don't grasp at it because you know it's not visiting you. It is you, remembering what you are. Every wisdom tradition has a version of this return. The hero's journey calls it coming home with the elixir. Buddhism calls it the bodhisattva's vow, to attain enlightenment and then turn back to help others cross. Christianity calls it resurrection, dying to what you were and rising as what you've always been. But you don't need traditions to tell you what you now know in your cells. You've been in the river. You've learned the current. You've touched the deep. And now you stand on this new shore, dripping with truth, and you have a choice. You can pretend it didn't happen. You can let the sun dry you off, let the memory fade, let the solid world convince you again that it's the only reality. Many do. It's easier, less lonely. The dry world doesn't like people who smell like river. Or you can be what Marcus was in his tent, a secret river flowing through an empire. You can be what Plato was in Athens, someone who remembered the light and spent his life helping others turn toward it. You can be what you actually are, the place where river and shore meet, where flow and form dance, where the eternal and the temporary make love and create this moment, this exact moment, this breath, this heartbeat, this now. And if you choose that, when you choose that, because something tells me you already have, then every day becomes a practice. Not a practice of getting somewhere, but a practice of remembering where you are. Here, now, on the shore that is also the river, in a body that is also the flow, living a life that is also life itself, playing at being you. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, "Perhaps all the dragons in our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us act just once with beauty and courage. Perhaps everything that frightens us is, in its deepest essence, something helpless that wants our love." The river taught you this, didn't it? That the current you feared was trying to carry you. That the depth you avoided was trying to show you your height. That the dissolution you resisted was trying to show you that you can't be destroyed because you were never separate from what is. So here we are, you and I, on the other shore, but also on every shore, also in every river, also in every moment where consciousness recognizes itself and smiles. We went looking for the river, and we found ourselves. We went looking for ourselves, and we found the river. And now we know they were always the same thing. This is your life now. Not a life about water, but a life as water. Flowing around obstacles, carving canyons through patience, finding the lowest place and making it holy. Accepting every tributary, releasing to every sea. Being transparent enough for light to pass through. being fluid enough to take any shape, being persistent enough to dissolve stone. And when you forget, and you will forget, we all forget. Forgetting is part of remembering. Just find water, a glass, a fountain, rain on your window, tears on your cheek. Find water and remember. This is you, temporarily in a different form. This is you, playing at being separate. This is you, on your way home to the sea. The river continues. With you or without you, it continues. But now it continues with you knowing what you are. And that changes everything. Not out there in the world, but in here, where you live. In here, where the river has always been flowing, waiting for you to stop fighting the current, waiting for you to remember. You were never standing beside the river. You were never even in the river. You are the river. You always have been. Welcome home. Welcome home.